Good evening, everyone. It is about 10 o'clock Tuesday night as I'm filming this video. And Derek, you can tell me tomorrow. I thought this was going up on Monday, but I get it up, and that's all that really matters to me. So 10 o'clock Tuesday night, this is your check-in video for weeks 5 through 6. So couple things to get out of the way before I talk about what went on last week and what's coming up, or what went on the last 2 weeks and what's coming up the next 2 weeks. So first thing, I'm going to be sending out a reminder after I get this video posted about our meeting this Friday. I know most of you are pretty good about remembering these. I also posted the dates for all of our meetings up on our La Luna schedule. So we have our second meeting of 4, that's this Friday, the 23rd, at 9 to 10, and in the same place we had it last time, D237. So at that meeting, we'll be talking about what we have discussed on our blog page for the last, mainly just this last response that we did last 2 weeks. But we'll kind of keep it general, talking about how things are going in your classes, questions that have come up. This is the first time I've seen you guys since week 1, so things have definitely changed, I'm guessing, since that first week. And so I really look forward to hearing some stories of different experiences you've had, because I'm sure there's much more than you're able to share on your short blog post. So watch for that email to come around, and please click the accept invite button. Hopefully it works. I think it worked for everyone the last time around. Second thing, with the blog responses. So those of you that have been posting have been doing a great job. They've been a real joy to read. I can really hear a lot of your personalities coming out. Those of you that are more creative writers, those of you that are more analytical. But so far, everyone's doing a great job with those if you've been posting them. So that's the first thing with the blog post, is that this last time around, I think there were 2 of you who didn't get a post up at all, 1 to 2, I can't quite remember. And then I think a handful of you might have gotten only 1/2 of your posts up. So remember with the post, and I was late on getting this up last week, but you are not only going to respond to the blog prompt that goes up for you, but then you also need to be conversing with your fellow writing fellows, and replying to a post that they put up. And just like the last time around, most of those responses to others have been really good. I haven't seen a lot of kind of generic answers to anybody. If you have been doing that, you'll be seeing the grades go up before our meeting this week for those first 2 blog responses, and I'm going to put comments there so no one's feeling like I'm calling them out on the blog page. So take a look at those. If you have a comment, it means I'm giving you a suggestion for future posts. If you don't have a comment, it basically means keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. And the second thing with the blog posts, I have heard from at least 2 people, there's a little bit of frustration where people are waiting till the last minute to get these things up. So it defeats the purpose of then having you reply to each other, because the original post for many of you are not even going up until 10 o'clock on the Saturday that they're due. So I am considering possibly adding a second deadline and making like our initial post due by the Friday, the day before they're normally due, or something like that, and then you'll have at least 24 hours to respond to someone else. I'm going to bring this up at our meeting and discuss how we can make this work a little better. I've already asked someone this morning about that, and so I'm open to suggestions here, but we need to be able to get that a little more figured out, because it is frustrating if someone's posting their response on the week it's due, but on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, then they're having to wait around for someone to post a response of their own and then reply. And with deadlines, often you do part of it and then you forget to go back and do the rest. So we all need to help each other out here and try to be a little more on top of the deadlines. So that's my kind of Debbie Downer-ish opening to this video, but the rest of it is not so sad. So I don't want to go too much into depth to what you posted for the blog last week, because I want to leave some of this for our discussion at our meeting Friday. But I will pull out a few things. I was jotting down some sentences that I like from different posts and then commenting on them. So a lot of what I saw was many of you talking about wearing, the last post was about wearing hats and the different hats a tutor wears. So many of you were talking about wearing the ally or the friend hat. And this, I may have said this before, I'm sure I did, but this is where being a peer tutor is very different from any other kind of teaching role you might have with students. You are in this really unique position. Someone mentioned there's hardly any age difference between you, many of you guys, and the students you're working with. And if there is, it's relatively small. Some of you it might be a little bit bigger, but you're still in the same situation. Even if there's an age difference, you're still a peer tutor. You're in the same situation as them. So this gives you this really unique perspective on being able to understand where they're coming from. Talk about things like Adrian's school supplies, or classes and instructors and different things going on campus. And it's something that me personally as a teacher or any of the other instructors you're working with, Amy or Tiare, don't have necessarily the opportunity to do. We try, right? I'm sure we've all formed some kind of relationship with our students, but it's not going to be the same and as natural as it might be with you guys. So do take advantage of that. And I was really glad to see people had this kind of realization of, look at this unique opportunity I have to be on their level, but also help them in a way. Let's see some of the other ones I picked out. So the other thing with the friend role or the ally role that's kind of interesting is it can be a little bit problematic for the students and for you. So for the students, it can cause them to maybe not take you so seriously. And for you, it can, if you end up not crossing a line, because I don't think there's a line here that you can cross, but if you end up becoming too close to a student, then you can fall into the trap of, I don't want to offend them with my comments, so I'm going to kind of sugarcoat or cut back on the feedback that I give them a little bit. So the reason we talk about the different hats you wear as a tutor is because of this, that having the friend hat can be really useful at the beginning of a session, but then you need to buckle down and get to the real meat of something. And I like Adrian's phrase of stitching hats together. So you might have your writing expert hat, which a lot of you seem to be afraid of, just because that word expert makes it sound like you know everything. And honestly, no one knows everything, not even teachers. So you might have that writing expert hat. You combine it with a coach hat, and that becomes the replacement in the second part of a session, a tutoring session, for the friend hat. So that awareness of when things need to switch, when you need to change your role within a tutoring session with the same person, not even just when you're working with different students. That's a really good thing to be aware of. And then along the same lines of getting comfortable playing these different roles, Derek's post talked about having to step outside of his comfort zone. And I believe I share this every semester, and I was sharing it with someone else just a few weeks ago. Teaching too, any kind of teaching, if you're a peer tutor, if you're an actual teacher, if you are doing any kind of role where you are sharing your knowledge with someone else, there's a performance aspect to it. So for me, when I have a certain point in the semester that I teach a certain essay and then talk about how it relates to the idea of teaching as a performance. So for me, I don't act like the same person when I'm teaching as if I were, left to my own devices just to be me on a regular basis. Even in these videos, I think I have a little bit of performance going on. So for all of you guys, no matter what you're with the tutoring, whatever you're doing, the different hats you're going to wear, some of them are going to feel weird. So there's a bit of the idea of fake it till you make it going on. And so I'm hoping as this semester goes on, you'll become more and more comfortable, and you'll start to figure out which hats you have a natural affinity for and which ones are going to be more of a stretch, and you'll be able to focus more on which ones you need to find that level of comfort with. One other comment that I want to pick up on, and then I'll finish with the last one that just made me laugh because it sounded like something I went through. I can't remember whose this came from, but it was someone talking, this was Nicole's post about working with a 5th grader on a research paper. And it was due the day after he asked for help on it. And there was a really interesting comment about helping this student and not judging him on getting his essay done so late. So this comes into play with the different hats too. There is a hat that's, I don't know which one it might be, but it's much more authoritative, where you might step in and feel the need to talk to a student about coming to you to get help with an essay when it's due in your class that afternoon. Or if they have to see a tutor, like this was happening in the early weeks with my fellows. The students were required to meet with the writing fellows for a simple meet and greet, 5 minutes long. Hi, my name is, and blah, blah, blah. And so many of them ended up not doing it on time. So I had at least 2, 3, 4 emails that were, I can't meet with the tutor because I have work, because I have this. And the idea that I had given them 2 weeks to do this and then they still didn't do it. But I don't think any of my writing fellows, you can correct me if I'm wrong later guys, but I don't think any of you said to the students like, you could have made this appointment a long time ago, why didn't you? You want to leave things like that to the instructor, right? There are some things that as a peer tutor you just don't want to do. So the same thing with if someone procrastinates on a paper, you don't want to chew them out for doing that. That's my job. Though admittedly I'm no better than students sometimes with getting things done. So having that worry over being too authoritative, when in doubt, always refer to the instructor on those kind of things. And the last thing I want to pick up on for the blog responses has no major significance for anything, but this was from, I'm pretty sure it was Bryce's post, Bryson's post. And this was about the students who you were so surprised, why are they even in 100T? They're brilliant, they know how to write. I don't know what they're writing about because it's so far above my head. And that's another role that you might have to play as the learner, right, is what you brought up in your post. And I went through one of these kind of things when I first started teaching. I had an older woman, so I think she was like in her 50s, and she was writing about some computer science thing. And I thought I was pretty technologically advanced until I read her paper and read it, had no idea what it was talking about. And then I had to figure out how to give her feedback on it. And it's one of those weird situations where you have to go, okay, I don't know what, this is so far above my head I can't understand it. So what do I do? And so the first thing you can do in that kind of situation is pick up on audience awareness. If you can't understand this paper, you don't know what they're talking about because it's so far advanced, then maybe they need to simplify things a bit. And if that's not the case, you think that they explained everything well, it was just so complicated that your brain could not absorb all the information, then you can turn to things that are purely writing based, like structure and word choice, and do they have enough source material? Did they cite the source material? Things that you do not have to have knowledge of the content for. So I just wanted to reassure you guys a little bit that even when someone's paper seems amazingly good, and so good that you really have nothing to say, that if you dig deep enough, there is always something to say. With the workshops that my students were doing in their class last week, even when a paper is really good, you still want to give someone something to work with. So Bryson, I really thought you did a great job with being able to help these students, and it was really great to hear of how you overheard them telling Tiare how helpful you were. So really glad to hear that. And if this wasn't Bryson's post, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure it was. So that's it for the kind of going over what we've done the last 2 weeks. Looking forward to the next 2, and I'll go over some of this on Friday as well. Our next blog response will be due by midnight on October 1st. For now, after the meeting, we may choose to change the deadline so that we all get a chance to reply to someone else. So the 2 different topics, they're both focusing on similar things. So for new writing fellows, we are reading, so if you look at the blog page, we're reading 3 essays. They're mandatory reads. We've got Jeff Brooks' Minimalist Tutoring, Linda Shamoun's and Deborah Burns' A Critique of Peer Tutoring, and Stephen Corbett's Tutoring Style, Tutoring Ethics. One thing to note, the first 2, the Jeff Brooks and the Shamoun and Burns piece, are both on the same PDF. I just posted it twice so you don't get confused. It says right after the Shamoun one that the article is found after Brooks' essays. So those 3 are mandatory reads. You need to read all 3 of them. And they all talk about this concept of directive versus non-directive tutoring, or non-directive is also known as minimalist tutoring. And it gets at how much of a role should we really be playing in a tutoring session as tutors? Do we want to sit there and tell a student, like, here's all of your comma errors, I fixed them for you? Or do we want to help them help themselves, in other words? Because really your goal as a tutor is not to always have a student need you, but to work with them so that they become trained in being able to solve some of their own problems without your help. So ideally, by the end of the semester, you'll be sitting back with your feet up on a table and going, they're all good now. They know how to do this. I am not needed. I can focus on my own work. Okay, so those first 3 are on the directive, non-directive approaches. Read all 3 of them. And then I have a list of 3 other essays from which I want you to only choose 1. So that's Carl Glover's Kairos in the Writing Center, Andrea Lunsford's Collaboration Control in the Idea of a Writing Center, and Marilyn Cooper's Really Useful Knowledge, a Cultural Studies Agenda for Writing Centers. Okay, and by the way, all of these readings this week are going to be a lot more dense than what we've been dealing with the past 4 weeks. They are your introduction to writing center theory, and we'll return more to this later on in the semester, because this week we've moved away from our text for the next 2 weeks. So choose one of those last 3. They're on other different tutoring approaches that can be used to replace the idea of directive and non-directive modes. So choose one, and then after you read everything, you're going to write a 1 to 2 page equivalent response, double spaced. If you go over 2 pages, don't freak out. I'm not going to know because you're posting it on the blog page. Just don't go on for too long about it. So what you're doing in this response is discussing your views on the various approaches to tutoring. So first, summarize the main ideas that underlie the theories of directed and non-directed tutoring. So starting with those first three that are the mandatory reads. And then once you've read your one selected from the last three, summarize the points of that particular article you choose to read. Then consider how you have been using these different theories in your own tutoring experiences thus far. And it sounds like everyone has at least talked to students. There were maybe a couple who said you didn't get official tutoring sessions yet, but you utilize these same techniques, these same things when you're just working with students in small group discussions and that kind of stuff. So don't freak out if you haven't worked on papers. It's the same idea whether you're just talking to them or working on papers. So talk about how you've used the theories in your own tutoring experiences. You can choose to talk about the experiences you've had using a specific approach, and then think about the choices, why you made the choices you did, whether on purpose or they just happen naturally. And then once you read about the pros and cons of each different approach, do you find yourself wanting to change your tutoring tactics that you've used so far? Do you find that you're too directive? Do you find that you're too non-directive? Do you find that you're not using collaborative learning at all? Okay, so that's for the new writing fellows. For the two of you that are returning, so again, David, if you're watching this video, hopefully you are, I want you to do the new writing fellow one. But Selena and Jace, you're going to be looking at a different set of articles. So for you guys, your mandatory article is Isabel Thompson's Scaffolding in the Writing Center, a microanalysis of an experienced tutor's verbal and nonverbal tutoring strategies. So read that one first. It's mandatory, and I will warn you it's long, hence why you don't have as much to read as the new guys. So read that and then choose one of the other three that I give you. So either Susan Lalock's The Tutor as a Creative Teacher, Balancing Collaborative and Directed Teaching Styles, and DePardot's Whispers of Coming and Going, Lessons from Fanny, or Muriel Harris's Talking in the Middle, Why Writers Need Writing Tutors. Okay, and you're going to be doing along the same lines as the new tutors in your response. You're posting a 1 to 2 page response. Same thing, you can go over 2 pages, just don't go to like 5. Where you discuss your views on the tutoring approaches and the tips the articles discuss, because these articles have a little more practical application rather than all theory. There's some points where they talk about here's what worked, here's what didn't, and that kind of stuff. Start the same as the other ones. Summarize the main ideas of each article, and then think about the pros and cons of each approach or the different ideas in the article. And then once you've done that, consider how you've been using the techniques and strategies in your own tutoring experiences. You guys each have more than a semester's worth of experience now. So have you personally discovered that some of these techniques are useful or not? And then in thinking about whether they're useful or not, think about how the demographic of the student population at UH West has an impact on this. If you read, especially if you read the Depardieu essay, it's really interesting. It talks about race and the role that race plays in tutoring sessions. So getting you to think about factors that come into play that we don't even consider most of the time. You have some really interesting articles to read. And then the last thing I want you guys to do specifically is provide some best practices of your own to the new writing fellows. You have quite a bit of experience by now. What have you found works particularly well, and what have you found doesn't? So Selena in particular has been really harping on the idea of getting to know the students you're working with. Become a friend, kind of, sort of. Though Selena, you've never used that term, but that's what I'm thinking you're going for. So that's one tip that Selena really, really likes a lot, and I've seen her bring up more than once. But think of some others. What are things that have worked really well? You can talk about the roles, you can talk about directive and non-directive, or anything else you've created on your own. Because there's a lot of best practices that aren't really discussed in the literature. Okay? So I think that is all I need to cover in this video. Again, I'll see you guys on Friday for our meeting. I'm looking forward to hearing how things are going, sharing some stories, and I will bring food again. By the way, if anyone wants to bring coffee, I'll leave that up to you guys. Either bring your own, BYOC, bring your own coffee, or if anyone feels so moved, you can bring for everybody, but I will supply food, not drink. Okay, so I'll see you then. Have a great rest of your week, and look forward to hearing how things are going. Have a good night.